What's going on, everybody? JD here with my trusty cup of coffee, ready to talk about some Pantheon early access. So let's get a drink, let's dive in. We got a long one ahead of us. There's some good coffee right there. Now, you might be a long-term supporter of the game. You might be somebody who heard about this game a long time ago, started watching it, and have given up on it. You may have written it off as vaporware. You may have never heard of the name Pantheon Rise of the Fallen until I just said it. Or you may be someone who has hung around the streams recently, looked at them, are kind of interested, but kind of are not sure about what's going on and what is all this business about EA, early access, is the game coming out, when's it coming out, what's coming out with it? Well, what I'm going to try to do today is to answer many of the questions that I get, as well as many other streamers get as we're streaming this game currently, or that show up on our YouTube videos, or that commonly happen in the VR official streams. So we'll see how well we can do. I expect to see more comments from all of you guys down below after this video and going forward. Obviously, if you find this video helpful, useful, hit that like button if you'd like to see more like it, click the subscribe button, and remember that I do live stream all of this content over on Twitch TV/JDon77. Link is down below in the description. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to answer, the first major question that I'm going to answer is, can I play Pantheon right now? The answer to that question is yes. You can play Pantheon right now, today, tonight. You will need to go onto the Pantheon website, in which you will find a link to down below in the description again. You will need to select Pledge. There's a little button. You click Pledge, or you just follow the link. It'll take you straight to the Pledge page. And you can get one of the many Pledge packages there. Currently, as far as I'm aware, the cheapest pledge is the Watcher's Pledge. It's $50, and it will give you the following benefits. And I've got them written down over here, so I'm not going to do a great job of staring at the camera as I read these. You get supporter testing access, which means you get to play right now. You gain supporter forum access. You get a digital copy of the game when the game goes live. You get early name reservation, early character creation prior to launch, an in-game title, Pantheon Explorer, and here's the most important part probably for some of you, a buddy code for an additional digital download. What does that mean? That means that for paying $50 today, you get 2 copies of the game. One for you, one for a buddy, and those copies will be active during the early access period. So not only can you start playing today, you and your buddy can start playing when early access begins, and you and your buddy will get full copies of the game when the game officially launches. Or you could just keep it and have 2 accounts for yourself, like many people will. This takes us to our second question. When does EA begin? Early access will begin on December the 13th. The servers will come down on December the 1st, and 12 days later, December 13th, servers will come back up. It is possible some level of testing may occur in between those dates. It seems unlikely, but it is possible, and that may be reserved to a very select group of people. We don't know. We're at the whim of Visionary Realms, and we're here to help them as much as we can through this testing period. It should be noted, when we say early access, do not misconstrue the concept of early access with what many MMOs like to call early start or head start. This is not an early start. This is not a head start. This is still very much an early access stage in the development, fully developing this game. So the early access period is going to be very long, and we'll get into more of that in just a moment. But December 13th is when the early access will officially begin, and you will be able to begin playing again once the servers go down. If you bought the pledge package, you will be able to begin playing today until the servers go down, and again on the 13th. If you did not buy the pledge package, when the early access begins, you will be able to buy a single copy of the game for $40. This brings us to our next question. Will there be a wipe? Yes, there will absolutely be a wipe for the testing phase that we're in right now as we proceed into early access. So you can expect that when the servers go down on December the 1st, whatever you've got on your character right now, whatever playing you've done, that will not be in existence when we get to the EA launch on December the 13th. Following directly behind this question, will there be a wipe for the 1.0 official launch of the game? Yes. Just as with any major MMO or most official game launches, when the game itself comes out, you can expect that all servers will be wiped, giving everyone a fair chance to start the game at the same point at the same time. Now, the lingering question is, will there be wipes during EA? The official response to this is that they will do as few wipes as possible, but I think most of us in the community, as well as VR themselves, have an honest expectation that there will probably be one or more potential wipes. I don't think these are going to come around often, but if there is a major exploit or a major game-breaking issue found, it's entirely possible that we will see a wipe occur during the early access period. You should once again understand, early access is not head start. You aren't playing your character that you should fall in love with. We are very much still in a testing mode for a very early development game. So with all of these things in mind, a great follow-up question to this is generally, how long will EA last? As of today, at the time of this recording, if you were to go to the Steam page right now and look at Pantheon, there is a 2-year period allotted for early access. So for the next 2 years, there's going to be significant development done on the game. There's going to be a very large game world to go and play in and test in, because this is very much still a testing phase. Why do you want to get involved right now? Why do you want to play a game for 2 years that's going to be wiped in 2 years? Because this is your chance to get in at the ground level and have an impact on how that game is developed, to give your feedback, to have your voice heard, as well as to get in with the grassroots of the community and really be a part of something special that generally doesn't happen with MMOs. Generally, you come into a finished product that meets a specific small group's vision, and that's not necessarily a negative thing, and you play it and they hope you like it. Here, while we're following a vision laid out by Visionary Realms, we have the ability to interact with them and say, hey, this part of the vision is really good. This part of the vision might need a little work, and they take that feedback very seriously. So if that's something that interests you, EA may be a very good option for you. So the next simple question that might pop in your mind is, what is it going to cost to play this game? Is it a buy-to-play game, or is it a subscription model? The current statement from Visionary Realms is that they intend for the game to be a buy-to-play game. This doesn't mean that subscription models are off the table. It just means they're still investigating what they feel is going to be of the most benefit to themselves, as well as what is going to be the most favored by the community. If there is a buy-to-play model, and possibly even if there is a subscription-based model, I think that you could expect that we will see things like cosmetic microtransactions in the game, because they are doing very well within this ecosystem right now. And it does produce a good amount of funding for companies like these to continue the development of their game, as well as keeping support staff and infrastructure in place. So we've talked a lot so far about the business side of Pantheon. When's it coming? What's it going to cost? How can I start playing? When's the launch? Those types of questions. Let's get to some questions about the actual game itself and the inner workings. One of the first questions that generally gets asked is, are there race class restrictions? In the current iteration of the game, and going into EA, there are no restrictions on class race combos. However, at a later point in time, that will change. We will eventually arrive at a point where lore-based classes and race combinations are what's going to be enforced. So what's an example of this? Let's say you want to play an ogre. You enjoy the big, beefy, burly boys that are the ogres. You're not going to make an ogre enchanter. Does that mean you'll never see an ogre enchanter? No, you might see an ogre enchanter, but the reality is that enchanter is actually probably a human or a darkmere or one of the races that have the capabilities of being an enchanter in an illusion as an ogre form. Or the player you're looking at might have an item that allows them to put on an illusion of an ogre. There will be many different types of race class combinations. Go look at monks, for example. They have a limited kit in terms of what races can be monks. And this is all based around the lore of the world. All right. We've chosen a race. We've chosen a class. We're ready to dig into some of the nuts and bolts of the game. Is there a trade skill system in this game? Am I limited in what trade skills that I can do? How do the trade skills work with one another? These are some pretty typical questions that come across. There is, in fact, a trade skill system in the game. It's got a lot of depth to it. It is still in a very early stage with a lot of changes set to come into play as we go throughout the early access period. As it stands today, you are able to do any and all trade skills on a single character or whatever you would enjoy doing. It has been stated that most likely at a later time, trade skills will be limited. How they will be limited, we don't yet know, but the current popular opinion within the community, and at least what we believe we've heard hints of, is that it would be something along the lines of you're able to do one manufacturing trade skill, one consumption-based trade skill, and perhaps one harvesting trade skill. So an example of this is that you might be a tailor for your manufacturing trade skill. You might be an alchemist for your consumption-based trade skill, and you may have chosen something like harvesting the crops on the ground or the herbs on the ground as your gathering-based trade skill. We don't know if that's factually what it's going to be. Why would they want to limit this to a single for each character. One of the things that you're going to hear highly spoken about and often repeated within the world of Pantheon is this is not your typical modern MMO. This is not a theme park MMO. This is not even necessarily, you could borderline say it is a sandbox MMO, but what you're mostly going to hear it referred to is a social MMO. And to be a social MMO requires the fact that the community needs to have interdependency upon one another. And this is especially true within trade skills. An example of this is if you wanted to make a breastplate as an armor smith, you're going to need certain things from the outfitting and or the tailoring trade skill lines to be able to complete that breastplate. You might also need something, if it's a very special breastplate, from say a jewel crafter or other trade skill lines, alchemy, for example. So you're not going to be able to successfully do a majority of the trade skills completely solo from a single character. You're going to have to work within the economy and the community that establishes that economy to accomplish the things that you want. But the short answer, the TLDR of all of this is, yes, there is a trade skill system, and there's a lot of changes coming to it. So the next question you might be asking yourself or wanting to ask me is, how many zones are there? How big is the world? I've got my trade skills. I'm ready to go gather things, but really, how many places are there to go out there and gather things from? Well, as of today, as I'm recording this video, which is November the 26th, 2024, there are 3 zones available for us to test. Now, that's going to change in early access. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But the current 3 zones that are available are Avendir's Pass, Thronefast, and Halnir's Cavern. I think it's actually called Halnir Cavern or something to that extent, but you get the point. Halnir Cavern is more or less the first true dungeon in the game. It's a blast to go and explore through. I may do some videos on it later, but for right now, just know there's a place called Halnir Cavern. Avendir's Pass and Thronefast are your overworld zones that each contain the first cities. The cities of Avelia, which really are more like villages, and the village of Dimith. They come complete with scroll vendors and banks and trade skill facilities and all that good stuff. Along with these, in both Avendir's Pass and Thronefast, there are overworld dungeons. In Thronefast, you will find the Goblin Tunnels, and in Avendir's Pass, you will find Hangor, home of the Orcs of the North. So 2 very cool places to go and explore and find a lot of things to do. Now, along with these 3 zones that we've just talked about, with the launch of EA, we're going to get 3 new zones. These zones are Wild's End, Eastern Plains, and Silent Plains. I believe the Silent Plains, it's currently being kicked around with the idea of renaming this to the Hills of Rohan. We'll see if that happens. The interesting thing about these new zones is that we will take the current zones, the size of them. You could put Thronefast and Avendir's Pass into a single one of any one of these 3 zones. They are very large. On top of that, this is going to introduce new starting areas. The halflings and the elves will now start in a place different than Thronefast, and you will also see ogres and Darkmere start in a different place than Thronefast. Now, the elves and the halflings, it's known where they're going to spawn. They're going to spawn in Wild's End. But the ogres and the Darkmere, it's being kind of kept close to the chest. So we're looking forward to that surprise. What does this mean for us going into EA? It means we have a lot more room to spread out, a lot more room to explore, a lot of unseen things for both new players and old players alike. And it's going to mean that there's a lot of fun to be had in these areas for everyone. So if you've been a tester in the past and you're just tired of testing the same areas, this should be good news for you. It's something for you to look forward to coming back to. So you're talking about all these zones. You're talking about all these places. Is there a map? Where can I see? There is no map in game. Yes, you heard me correctly. You cannot press M and bring up a map. Now, depending upon who you talk to, some people will say, well, there's a map on the way. And others will say, there's not a map. There's never going to be a map. There never was a map. And many will say, I don't want a map. And others are going to be like, man, I just wish I had a map. There are a lot of mixed feelings about a map in a game like this. Some people love the fact that there is no map. Others say, I definitely want a map. What has been spoken about officially has been that there will be some form of a map, most likely at some point in the distant future. And what seems to be a very trending and popular belief within the game right now, both amongst supporters and staff members, is the potential for a cartography system in which players would build out their own maps rather than the typical press M and pop up a big map of the world. We don't know for sure what's going to happen there, but as of right now, there is no in-game map. That being said, there's a map. Oh, there is one map in the game. Maybe I'll show it to you. All right, so we've talked about the fact that Zones are coming. Trade skills are coming. Let's talk about character progression. One of the most hot button topics out there. Can I solo? Yes, you can. You can solo in Pantheon. This is a social MMO. It is heavily built around the concept of group-based combat, party play, socializing, getting to know your community. But you can absolutely go in solo. In fact, some classes are far better at soloing than others, and they kind of thrive at it. But as a player who might, say, work off hours, or you just couldn't find a group today and you want to get out there and get some experience, there are soloing avenues available. What should be apparent to you is that as you are playing the game, you will see monsters running around in the world like this one that have a little chevron, some people might call it a carrot, symbol on their target frame. You should take note of this. This is an indicator that this is a group-based mob. And the idea has been floated that we may even in the future see what are considered multi-chevron mobs, indicating an even higher level of difficulty. If you're from an MMO like World of Warcraft, you would recognize these as elites. Only they're right now even a little bit more powerful than elites. You need a group of people, for the most part, there are exceptions, to take these creatures down. And these are not intended to be soloed so much. Now, this is one dimension of considering whether you can fight that mob or not. The second dimension, when looking at monsters and determining whether or not it is safe for you to attack them, revolves around the con system, which is a consideration system in regards to the monster's level compared to yours. This is a color-coded system, and it not only tells you the difference between levels, it also tells you whether or not this monster is considering killing you or considering you an ally or something in between. Now, we're going to focus at this point in time on simply the color-coded messages. So they start off in gray and they say something like trivial and yields no experience. That's what a gray con mob means to you. Then it will go to green. Green means very easy. It will yield minimal XP. You'll get a tiny bit, like 1 when if you kill this other mob over here, it would give you 100 and they'd be just as difficult. Okay. Then there's light blue. Light blue is still easy. Not quite as easy as green, but still easy. And it's going to give you a little bit of experience. Not minimal, but a little bit. Then we move into blue. Blue is going to be kind of where most people's bread and butter is for soloing, for the most part. Blue is a standard mob. You're most likely going to have no problems taking it, and it's going to give you some okay experience. Then we move into what is considered a white con. White con means even. It's the same level as you. This is where it's going to start to get a little bit more challenging. You may or may not be able to take a white con. It's going to give decent experience if you can kill that white con. Then we move into the yellows. Now, yellows, we're now looking at mobs that are slightly above us, maybe a level, maybe up to 2 or 3 levels. Yellows are going to be very challenging. They yield very good experience, though. Then we get into your oranges and dark oranges. This is getting into 3 to 4 levels above you. These are going to be very challenging. They're going to reward some of the best experience in the game. And then finally, we go to the tier of red. When we get to red, you're probably going to die if you try to solo that unless you're an extremely powerful class or have figured out some type of a gimmick, a mechanic that allows you to take on reds. Reds can be 5 levels or more, all the way up to max level, greater than you. You don't know what level they are in comparison to you unless you somehow manage to go and look that up somewhere, which means they can probably mop the floor with you. This being said, reds give the most experience, but they're also going to be the hardest for you to kill. If you're a melee, you're going to have an extremely difficult time hitting a red monster. If you're a caster, you're going to have an extremely difficult time landing your spells on a red monster. So keep in mind, reds, just because they give the most experience, are not necessarily the best targets to farm. Oftentimes, blue, white, some yellow are going to be the best experience to farm solo. The higher you can kill and do it efficiently, the better off you are. In a group, groups are typically going to want to farm white, yellow, orange con mobs. Getting into red is a debatable area unless you're really just trying to push yourself. A lot of times the risk is not worth the reward when trying to fight red mobs. We'll see more on that later as we go through the discussion, but that gives you a bit of an explanation about soloing and the consideration system inside of Pantheon. All right, so I think I have made the point about soloing. Yes, it's capable. Some people may greatly enjoy it. But as I stated earlier, the real focus of the game is around grouping and socializing. So how do I find a group? Is there a party finder? Is there an instance finder? Is there a dungeon finder? Let's address those all in kind of one ball for just a moment. Number one, there is no instance-based combat like you will find in WoW. Now, down the road in a far, far away future, it is possible that the pinnacle bosses of dungeons and of areas may be instanced. In fact, I think the plan is currently to have them instanced so that people can have a chance to go get them and they're not on permanent farm status where you never get a chance to take a shot at them. But most of the content you're going to find is going to be open world combat. It's very much based around clearing to an area, camping that area, farming for a specific monster to spawn or a specific drop from it. So how do I find a party that wants to do that? Well, in game, there are a couple of ways. You could either type /OOC, which means out of character, and advertise yourself. Hey, I'm a level 14 enchanter and I'm looking for group. Hey, I'm a level 14 enchanter and I'm looking for group for Halnir's Cavern, or what other place you might want to go to. Or you can press L in game and it will pop up this menu. This is the social menu. Under the social menu, there are a couple of tabs. There is a Who tab, there is a Looking for Group tab, there is a Friend tab, and there's a Looking for More tab. The Looking for Group tab allows you to see all players in the game that are currently looking for group. You can click the filter and increase your search criteria, search range to include all zones where people might be looking for group. You can remove the flag where you're looking for people just that are looking for group. You can look for specific classes. You can look for specific levels. You can look for all kinds of different things in this Looking for Group panel. The Looking for More tab allows you to see groups that are already in existence that are looking for more of different class types. The Friend tab is exactly what you expect. It shows you who is online that has added you to their friend list. Keep in mind that when trying to add somebody to a friend list, it requires them to accept your friend request. And then the Who tab allows you to do a search just about the same as you would as if you were to type /who. Pro tip for you, if you're in a guild, you might want to make a macro that says /who space all space guild. This will show you every guild member that's online, irregardless of what zone they're in for the current server that you're on. Okay, so we know how to join groups. We know how to find our way around the world a little bit. We know race class combos. We know about trade skills. Are there quests? Yes, there are quests in this game. The quests will be found by going in, here's the fun part, interacting with the various NPCs that you'll find sitting around the towns. You're not going to see an NPC sitting around the town that has punctuation marks above their heads. You're not going to see a map with an indicator of where to go next. So there are quests. Quests are a bit different in this game. Quest is not the primary source of XP. You're not in a theme park where you ride the rides and you get the experience and you go up the levels. There are some quests that give experience and some quests give better experience than others. Many of the quests, however, are meant to provide coin or items or reputation, which will become more important down the road. Some provide a combination of these rewards. So look at the quests that you're getting. Another pro tip for you. When you're first beginning in the game, some of the quests you're going to want to do revolve around a character known as the Scavenger. These quests are quite important because they produce tools which allow you to begin the early game harvesting. You could go buy these tools if you didn't want to do the quests, but doing the quest and following through with the quest lines yields some very nice rewards that you might be interested in that will speed up your overall gameplay experience. No spoilers this time, but check them out. So we've talked about soloing. We've talked a bit about grouping and how to find a group. We've talked a little bit about quests. Let's go back to classes and grouping for just a bit here. What are good duo setups? What are good group setups? What are good strong classes? All right, let's answer some of those questions. We'll start off with what are good duo class setups. So in many games, the obvious answer to this is healer and tank is always good. Okay, they just are. But other things that you're going to find that are very good in this are things like healers and wizards, or pet classes like necros make for very good duo partners because of their Swiss Army knife functionality and the fact that they can mez, they can heal, they can dot, they have a pet. Summoners make for excellent soloists, but they also make for excellent duo members because, especially once they get to level 20, because their pet has the ability to heal their other pet as well as do other things. Enchanters, with their ability to bring buffs and slows and mezzes and things of this nature, can make for good duo partners. This should get expanded as we get into the charm line for enchanters. So there are a lot of good duo capabilities. Now, one of the things that you're going to take away from this video as I continue to talk about classes is classes have a lot of identity, and they have done a very good job in the majority of certain situations of really balancing classes right now. Now, obviously, we're in an early alpha, early access state where these are going to be shifting and adjusting constantly. So if you're watching this at a much later time, ask around a bit. Go see what the current state is. This is, 5 days before we go into early access. We're at an early stage in alpha. There's a lot of class polishing and class changes that are coming. Okay. But really, in terms of duo, something with something that can heal is probably going to have a pretty good time. What are some of the most effective duos? Shamans make one of the most effective duo partners because they bring big buffs. They bring the ability to heal. They get a pet. They have the ability to do dot damage. Necros, I think, are also an extremely effective duo partner because of their ability to snare, root, dot, mez, heal, and have a pet. So they bring a lot of functionality. Clerics are great for big bandages, but they don't quite bring the same level of buffs that shamans do. Those are probably two of what I would say are two of the strongest duo class choices are shamans and necros. Doesn't mean none of the other classes can do it. Doesn't mean there's other combos out there, and your mileage may vary with both of those two classes. This will most likely immediately follow into the question of what class is the strongest? This is an extremely subjective question to ask. It's very difficult to answer because what do we mean by strongest? Who does the strongest damage in a single hit? Who has the most life sustain in combat? Who's got the most sustained DPS? Who's got the best chance of soloing a group mob? What do we mean by strong? So wizards are some of the hardest hitting classes in the game. They can do very large hits for very large chunks of their mana. Rogues, monks give some of the rangers, give some of the best sustained damage in the game. Magicians are very strong. Well, magicians, summoners, I'm sorry. The EQ is coming out at me. Summoners have some of the most sustained capability of any class in the game with the way their pets operate and their ability to continually resummon new pets and heal their own pets, as do necros. So it's really hard to say what is the most strongest. We'd have to really file that down to some specific categories. So what I will say as far as what class should I play, the other question that comes along with this is what's played the least, what's played the most, etc., right? Play what is the most fun to you. Regardless of how much a class is needed, not needed, or what power spike it's sitting at, if you don't enjoy the class fantasy, if you don't enjoy the playing of that class, doesn't matter how strong they are, doesn't matter how needed they are, you're going to quit playing the game. Tanks are always needed. Healers are always needed. In this game, as of right now, support classes are greatly desired. That'd be Enchanter and Necromancer. DPS is always needed too, though. And so this should kind of start to drive us towards our next question. How many people comprise a group? Groups in this game are made up of 6 people. So that means, generally speaking, the group composition, which would be probably the next following question, right? What is the standard group composition? Is probably going to involve something similar to what people would call the Holy Trinity, but it's more of a holy cross here because you've got tanks, healers, DPS, support. So a very common group composition might look something like a warrior or a tank, paladin, dire lord, take your pick. A healer, a priest, right? It could be a cleric, could be a shaman, might be a druid. We don't have them yet. They're coming. And then you would have potentially a support, maybe even 2 supports. You might have an enchanter. You might have a necro. You might have both. Later on down the road, you might have a bard. And then finally, you're going to fill in with DPS. Now, this is where it gets interesting. There are different types of DPS. You might have a rogue. You might have a monk. You might have a wizard. You might have a summoner. You might have, you're going to have up to 3 to 4 of these. Maybe 2 of these, depending upon how you set things up, right? Wizards. But it really depends on how you want to set up the group because all classes come with techniques and different things that allow you to adjust the current combat scenario to tailor to your group. Your group may be more magic damage focused. Your group may be more physical damage focused. And there are different benefits to bringing each different class to the game. So you have to really weigh and measure what are you going up against, what best fits your group composition to determine what 6 players you want. And as I said at the beginning, or a few moments ago, there is a definite identity for all classes. What do we mean when we say identity? Enchanters do a lot of crowd control. We have the ability to mez, we have the ability to root, we have the ability to charm, we have the, not yet, but charm's coming. We have the ability to stun, to silence, to steal spells. Monks have the ability to feign death. They do excellent. They have the ability to lower their aggro by throwing a shuriken, to pull monsters and hopefully not pull multiples. Rogues have the ability to go stealth and lay down traps and do stuns, smoke bombs that would take enemies out of combat momentarily. Wizards get the ability to root. Some classes will have the ability to slow. Some classes will have the ability to lower magic resistance or armor or put bleeds. There are a ton of different ways that different classes contribute to the group in different ways. Interrupts are a very important part of the game, depending upon where you are and what you're doing. Certain classes bring more static interrupts. Some only have very long duration interrupts. And so you have to weigh and measure these things against one another to determine what group composition is going to work best for you. So talking about grouping and the individual identities of characters, another question that typically arises is, how do I scale myself as a player? What makes me stronger in this game? And this is an area of roughness right now. I'll be very frank in terms of how do we scale player power? Now, there are several different dimensions in which player power will scale over time. Dimension 1 is the most obvious one. We go up levels, we get new spells. Those spells become more powerful. Dimension number 2 that kind of goes right alongside number 1. And by spells, I mean all abilities. I don't just mean we cast spells, but abilities in general. Number 2 is we get items, gear, and that should scale us. Better armor gives us more defense. Better weapons gives us higher damage. Currently, there are some issues with itemization because of the most recent patch, but they're actively being addressed and worked on. The community spoke, the devs and team listened, and that's actively being addressed right now in an upcoming patch. But so we have the leveling dimension, which gives us access to all of these things. Within the leveling dimension, we have new abilities. We have access to new equipment. Now, along with new equipment and new abilities and leveling comes the dimension of stats. Some items will have stats. We will probably most likely see the potential for some stat growth every so many levels possibly on our characters as a base part of the leveling system. Then there are things like mastery, which is kind of a hybridization of what you might know in the World of Warcraft world as talents or in the EverQuest world as alternate advancement, AA. And it's kind of a hybridization. We don't know exactly what model that's going to follow yet, whether it's going to be pick and choose or it's going to be eventually you'll get them all, so fill them out. But what we have seen in the past was that mastery contributed significantly to player power development. And so as we go through EA and through the testing phases, we're going to expect to see a lot of different ways for power scaling for players to continue to grow and hopefully be balanced in a way that creates a fun and challenging game. So now that we know that leveling contributes to our power growth in a few different dimensions, what's the level cap? Well, in EA, the level cap is expected to be, and currently is announced as, level 40. In Live, the level cap will begin at 50 with the potential to grow later through expansions and other things, as we have seen is typical in most MMOs. But today, it's 40. This should immediately raise another question, most likely, and that question is, what is the leveling pace? So to put it in perspective, I believe if you've ever been a player in EverQuest, you'll remember way back when the launch of EverQuest, just how slow the experience grind was. Today, with all the knowledge that we have about MMOs and how to play them, if you were to go back and play that exact same 1999 experience of leveling, it's nowhere near as slow as it was then. We understand how to do this better. We're more efficient at it. So what I will say is, I'll make the following statement, and some people will probably, as with most of the answers that I've given, many will probably have their own opinions and choose to tell me, no, you're wrong, and that's okay. But what I would expect is that you will feel leveling that is akin to how leveling in EverQuest in 1999 felt. That being said, I expect the leveling to actually be slower than that because we're too good at it now. So in testing right now in EA, and I fully expect this to change, what I would expect for a brand new player who's never touched this game to come in and do is within 2 hours, you're probably going to be around level 4 to 6 for most classes if you're jumping in groups and looking around and figuring things out. I don't expect you to be much higher than 4 to 6 in your first 2 hours. For a player who really knows what they're doing and is really getting out there and getting after it, depending upon if you're soloing or grouping, I would say that the potential is going to be anywhere between 8 to 12, depending upon your class, potentially higher, but not much higher. leveling does very much begin to slow down. As of right now, in the EA, my character is a level 30 enchanter. I've played it a lot, and the leveling has drastically slowed down. But to be fair, I know people that are in their 33s, 34s. I think there's a couple of 35s running around. So could we have gotten higher? Yes. Could we have gone harder? Yes. But we're also here to test, not just play the game. And I've spent a lot of time on a lot of other characters, and I've got multiple 10s, 15s and stuff running around. And I really have spent a lot of time just testing little small details about itemization, about stats working and things like that. But if you're just sitting down playing, you can expect for a much more slowed down pace than what you're expecting to in games like World of Warcraft. This game is not meant to go fast. The leveling pace is slowed down. And the point is this: take your time, explore the world, get to know the people around you. This is a marathon game. It's a marathon within a marathon. You're going to be here for a while. And if you enjoy this world and you enjoy this type of game, that should be pleasurable to hear. If you're looking to go really fast and zoom and just zip to it, and I've seen the game, I've done the game, I'm done with the game, you're probably not going to have the best of times. That's just not what's intended to go on here. So hopefully that paints a picture for you in some, form. So we're grouping, we're leveling, we're climbing up the golden ladder, and we get to the top. Will there be raids? Yes, there will be raids in this game. In fact, there should be some really great raids in this game, judging by some of the content that we've seen. So a follow-up question to that should be, will raids be open world or instanced? Both. As I understand it today, and as has been talked about a few times, I think many of the instant raids will require the completion of an open world raid to gain access to it. Think of this like flagging or keying in other MMOs where you may have done something similar. Along with that question, the next question is probably, well, what size will the raids be? To my knowledge, the current sizes that have been touted are 12, 24, and potentially 36 in terms of raid size. I did see a couple of mentions and hints at 42, but I think 36 is probably more realistic as the upper echelon. We could see them get even bigger than that. We don't know everything. And we could see them stay smaller. They may stay at 24. We don't know exactly what decision VR will make on this because everything is still very fluid right now, and them finding what feels best for the game and the vision that they're trying to achieve. But yes, you will see raids. Yes, they will be of larger size. They're coming. So we're beginning to get to the end of these EA questions that I think we've covered a lot of questions that I typically get answered on a regular basis. So these final two are legitimate, but at the same time, they're kind of just fun questions. So the first one that I'm going to put up there is something that I get asked very regularly. Are there dragons? Bro, come on, man. Yes, there's dragons. There are dragons in the game. Second question. Well, final question. It's like the 25th question, I think. Should I buy this game? This is opening a giant can of worms. So let me take a deep breath before I answer it. No, you should not buy this game. You should run as fast as you can and absolutely buy as many copies of this game as you can afford and give it to all of your friends and bring them to Terminus because I need you. I need you to come and play this game with me. It's so good. That being said, many of you have been burned by early access. Many of you have been burned by the duration of crowdfunding games and how long it's taking them. We have a plethora of examples out there. We've got EverQuest Next, we've got Star Citizen, we've got Pantheon itself, we've got just a whole bunch of games that people have staked their hopes and dreams on. This is going to be the game that I've been waiting on. Trust me, I understand. I'm with you. I put money into every one of those games with nothing but big hopes that didn't work out for various reasons, and I don't blame them. It sucks, but that is the state of the world. Sometimes things just don't work out. This game has been in development for 10 years. People will call it vaporware. People will say they've drugged their feet. People will say they've squandered money. They've wasted time. Those may all be true statements, depending upon how you look at it. Irregardless, the team that is working on this game is actively solving the problems that have occurred with this game. They have run into times where they had to make tough decisions and they had to make changes to the direction they were going, but they did so with their head held high. They held accountability with their audience. They have come to us and worked with us, and they are driving forward. And the product that they are currently delivering is a phenomenal product. It is a blast to get in this world and play. It is awesome to have the interaction that we have with the devs. Do I agree with everything they do? No. And I call them out on it, and I criticize them in a polite way. And I tell them exactly what I think. I'll give you an example. Right now, there is a change in the game for enchanters that I absolutely stand against. Joppa and team. DRs are bad. But it's still a great game, and I'm still going to play it. And I'm going to trust in the vision that they're leading forward. I'm going to trust that the community and the team are going to work together to put the best possible game out there. Should this game be a carbon copy of EverQuest? No. Should this game be anything like WoW? Yes, there should be some things that are taken from WoW. Should it be just like WoW? No. It needs to be Pantheon, and Pantheon needs to capture the magic of the bygone golden era of MMOs and bring it to a modern audience that allows it to have the sustainability and the enjoyability to keep us in this world having a great time interacting with one another for many years to come. And I believe that's exactly what this team is attempting to do. So should you buy the game? I think you should. I think people spend more money to go buy a couple of burgers that are bad for your health than it's going to cost to come and experience a world that you may find a great deal of happiness in for a very long time to come. And you're supporting a team that's really trying to put a quality product out there in a way that I have not seen any other team do in a very long time. So that's it. Those are the EA questions that I have for you. How well this video is going to come out, I have no idea, because I've never recorded a video in the format that I just recorded this one in, and it may come out like crap. I'm going to upload it anyway and hopefully answer all of y'all's questions. I hope I did a good job. Leave me some comments down below and let me know if you have more questions. I can make a follow-up video. If you liked it, like it. If you'd like to see more like it, click the subscribe button, bell icon for notifications. Remember, I live stream this content on JDon. Wait, no, that's not it. I live stream this content on Twitch TV/JDon77 almost on a nightly basis. So stop by, say hi, come hang out. I look forward to seeing you all. God bless you all. Laters.